Top 1. The Pumapunku Stone Code. Let's begin our journey in the high altitudes of Bolivia, where stones seem to have been shaped by machines rather than human hands. In 1945, a Bolivian archaeologist named Arthur Posnansky stood before the massive ruins of Pumapunku near Tiwanaku, frozen in silence. What he saw there defied every known tool or technique of the ancient world. Scattered across a high plateau more than 12,000 feet above sea level were immense stone blocks, each weighing up to 131 tons. But it wasn't their size that shocked him. It was their perfection. These stones were not crudely carved. They were cut with symmetrical holes, machine-like slots, interlocking corners, and right angles so precise they could rival the calibration of a modern milling machine. Some were shaped like puzzle pieces, meant to fit only one specific counterpart. The precision was surgical, beyond the reach of copper chisels or stone hammers. What Posnansky found looked less like an ancient temple and more like a machine blueprint frozen in stone. This place should not exist. Pumapunku's stone blocks are made from diorite and andesite, materials so hard that modern-day steel tools are required to cut them. Yet the Inca, who are thought to have built Tiwanaku, did not possess steel. Some of the stones bear deep grooves and bore holes that seem to have been made by rotary tools. Others feature internal angles of exactly 90 degrees and perfectly flat surfaces that reflect light like polished glass. These are not the results of crude carving. Engineers from the 21st century have tried recreating these cuts using hand tools from the pre-Columbian era and failed. The level of symmetry and alignment is so exact that even with today's technology, reproducing such work would require laser-guided systems or precision lathes. How then were these created more than 1,000 years ago at an altitude higher than most mountains in Europe? A 3D scan conducted in the early 2000s revealed a shocking detail. Some of the stones have grooves and inner holes with margins of error under 1/50th of an inch. That kind of accuracy is unheard of in ancient architecture. One block in particular, known as the H block, features a U-shaped channel that terminates in a right-angled turn, something that would require a 3-axis drill in modern fabrication. The surface is flat down to microscopic levels, with tool marks suggesting rapid material removal rather than slow abrasion. Even more puzzling is that the blocks were seemingly prefabricated, each with specific notches and joints, indicating they were designed to connect into a larger modular system. This is not how temples were built in ancient times. This is how machines are assembled. Despite decades of study, no quarry has ever been definitively linked to the source of these stones. The nearest potential quarry is nearly 50 miles away and across a lake. Transporting 100-ton blocks over that distance without wheels, cranes, or draft animals is a feat that has no parallel in known history. Yet the stones are here, laid out with eerie regularity, stacked as if guided by schematics. Some researchers believe these blocks were melted and cast into shape using unknown techniques. Others suggest advanced acoustic or vibration tools may have been employed, technologies not even fully developed today. If these claims sound outrageous, it is only because the alternative explanation is more disturbing. Someone in the ancient world possessed knowledge that has since vanished. Stranger still is the silence that surrounds Pumapunku in mainstream discourse. Despite being one of the most technically baffling ruins on Earth, it is rarely featured in textbooks or official archaeological studies. Satellite surveys of the site were never published. Local oral traditions speak of the gods building the site in a single night. After Posnansky's original measurements were dismissed by academic institutions in the 1950s, no significant excavation has been attempted. It is as if the world quietly decided this place was too problematic to study further. If Pumapunku is indeed what it appears to be, a complex of stone parts fabricated with precision exceeding modern tools, then the implications stretch far beyond South America. It suggests that human civilization may have once possessed a form of technology entirely incompatible with our linear view of history, a knowledge that was erased, lost, or buried, leaving behind only these frozen blueprints in stone. But the stones are still there, still perfect, still waiting. Top 2. The true north of Giza. Moving across the globe to Egypt, we encounter a structure so perfectly aligned that it challenges the limits of modern GPS technology. In 1925, an expedition led by British surveyor Sir Flinders Petrie returned to London with measurements that left the Royal Geographical Society in quiet disbelief. They had recalculated the orientation of the Great Pyramid of Giza using modern instruments and found something impossible. The pyramid sides aligned with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, with a margin of error under 0.05 degrees. In other words, the Great Pyramid, constructed over 4,500 years ago, was oriented to true north more precisely than many modern buildings using GPS. The Egyptians of the 4th dynasty should not have been capable of this. No compasses, no satellites, no telescopes, just copper tools and star charts drawn in sand. Yet the pyramid remained, casting its shadow in absolute alignment with the Earth's axis. This should not have happened. The pyramid stands on the Giza Plateau, built from an estimated 2.3 million limestone blocks, weighing up to 15 tons each. But it is the base, perfectly level within half an inch across 13 acres, and its orientation to true north that baffles experts. Modern engineers must account for magnetic declination and the Earth's axial precession when building structures with precision. How did ancient Egyptians compensate for those factors without any known mathematical model of axial drift or polar movement? One hypothesis is that they used the rising and setting of specific stars to align the pyramid, but even this explanation fails under scrutiny. Precession shifts star positions over time, and without precise instruments to track their changes, matching alignment within fractions of a degree would be virtually impossible. A theory published in 2000 suggested that the Egyptians could have used a shadow casting method involving a gnomon in equal hour tracking. Yet controlled experiments have shown that even under ideal conditions, the best possible result deviates by at least 0.1 degrees, 10 times worse than the alignment at Giza. The builder's knowledge of geometry and surveying was clearly advanced, but the degree of precision raises the suspicion of an unknown methodology. The exact center of the pyramid is located on the 30th parallel, dividing the northern and southern hemispheres almost equally. Even stranger, when plotted on a globe, the pyramid lies at the intersection of the longest lines of latitude and longitude. Some researchers argue that only satellite data could allow such perfect placement. Over time, photographs, architectural plans, and measurements from various expeditions were quietly contradicted or dismissed. In the 1970s, a study suggesting that the pyramid's foundation stones had been machined using a form of copper saw laced with sand was buried in academic archives. In 1984, Egyptian authorities denied a request from Japanese researchers to conduct a full satellite-guided subsurface scan of the plateau. No reason was given. Requests to revisit the site with LiDAR and geomagnetic sensors have been repeatedly delayed or denied. The precision of the Great Pyramid is not just ignored, it is actively shielded from deeper investigation. Some believe the alignment has a deeper purpose. Researchers have proposed that the pyramid is part of a global energy grid calibrated to Earth's natural frequency, or even a tool for astronomical encoding. While these ideas remain speculative, one fact cannot be dismissed. The pyramid's orientation exceeds the standards of most modern engineering projects. It is not just aligned with the planet, it is anchored to it in a way that suggests an understanding of Earth's rotation and geometry that should not have existed in 2500 BC. If the Great Pyramid's orientation was achieved intentionally, then the civilization that built it had knowledge we do not understand, using tools we cannot reproduce for purposes we have yet to decipher. This would not just rewrite Egyptian history, it would suggest an entire layer of scientific capability has been erased from human memory. Top 3. The Kailasa Monolith. In the heart of India, a massive temple was carved not from the ground up, but from the top of a mountain down. In 1819, a group of British officers on a tiger hunt near Ellora, India, stumbled upon what appeared to be the top of a structure buried in a hillside. As they approached, they realized it was not buried. It was carved. What emerged from the rock face was the entrance to a colossal temple unlike anything they had ever seen. Known today as the Kailasa Temple, it is the largest monolithic structure in the world. Carved downward from a single volcanic basalt formation, every column, stairway, statue, and shrine was hewn from solid stone. No scaffolding, no bricks, no mortar, carved with such detail and scale that entire cathedral-sized chambers were hollowed out with precision down to the inch. According to mainstream archaeology, this was done in the 8th century using chisels and hammers. But the math doesn't work. The temple was not built from the ground up. It was carved from the top down, removing an estimated 400,000 tons of rock in the process. This means that not only did the builders have to know the final layout of the temple in advance, but they had to execute it in reverse with zero room for error. One miscalculation could destroy the entire structure. The temple is over 100 feet tall and extends nearly 200 feet in length. To carve this with hand tools would have required generations of labor. Yet some inscriptions suggest it was completed in less than 20 years, a timeline that implies nearly miraculous efficiency. At that rate, over 20,000 tons of rock would have to be removed each year using only iron chisels and primitive tools. That translates to carving out over 2 tons per hour, day and night, for 2 decades straight. Inside, the precision becomes even more inexplicable. Symmetrical columns extend in perfect alignment. Roof carvings echo patterns from distant Mesopotamian cultures. Some pillars are hollow and resonate like tuning forks. The stone is fused in such a way that different chambers produce different acoustic frequencies. Art historians have noted that many of the statues display postures and techniques that were not common in Indian art until centuries later, suggesting either a revival of older techniques or influence from an unknown school of architecture. Engineers who have studied the site found no signs of incremental chiseling, but rather continuous cuts, implying the use of large-scale cutting tools or softening techniques never recorded in Indian construction history. The mystery deepens with the temple's orientation. It is precisely aligned with the cardinal directions, and the inner sanctum is illuminated by a single beam of sunlight on specific dates, suggesting astronomical calibration. Yet there are no records of the temple's design blueprints, architects, or detailed construction history. Most of what is known comes from oral legends and inscriptions added long after its completion. Some researchers argue that the temple may predate its attributed era, with later rulers simply claiming credit. In recent years, 3D scanning of the temple has revealed geometric consistencies that match sacred architecture found in vastly distant cultures, including the pyramids of Egypt and the megalithic sites of Peru. How such cross-cultural architectural similarities could emerge in isolation is still unexplained. Despite its uniqueness, the Kailasa temple remains understudied. Requests for high-resolution, ground-penetrating radar scans and structural analysis have been delayed for decades. India's archaeological survey limits access to key areas, and photography of inner chambers is restricted. For a monument that should be a global architectural wonder, the silence is deafening. If the Kailasa temple was truly built in 18 years using only primitive tools, then its creation represents one of the greatest feats in human history. But if it was not, if its origin lies in an earlier era, or with a technology now forgotten, then what we are looking at is not a temple. It is a remnant, a relic from a time when human hands shaped stone as if it were clay, guided by knowledge we no longer possess. Top 4. The seamless wall of Sacsayhuaman, high in the Peruvian Andes. Walls exist that are so tightly fitted that even a razor blade cannot pass between the massive stones. In 1934, a team of Peruvian engineers conducting a structural survey in the highlands near Cusco reached a standstill. Before them stood the remains of Sacsayhuaman, an ancient complex built from megalithic stones so massive and tightly interlocked that the team could not explain their assembly. Some stones measured over 30 feet tall and weighed as much as 200 tons. What made the structure even more perplexing was that there was no mortar between the stones. None. Yet they fit together so precisely that not even a razor blade could slide between them. Each block was a different shape, carved irregularly, and yet assembled like a jigsaw puzzle with no gaps, no collapse, and no corrections. These walls have withstood earthquakes that destroyed colonial buildings nearby. No repairs, no shifts. Not a single stone has moved in over 500 years. This kind of stability is not supposed to exist without modern engineering. The outer wall of Sacsayhuaman stretches in a zigzag pattern for nearly 1,000 feet, rising in 3 terrace levels. Unlike brick walls or stacked stone structures, Each block here appears custom carved to interlock with its neighbors in 3 dimensions. Engineers who studied the wall in the 1970s noted that some stones have as many as 12 angles with inward-facing cuts that prevent outward collapse. The joints follow no straight lines but rather flowing contours that distribute weight and tension throughout the structure. These techniques are not recorded in Inca construction manuals. In fact, there is no record at all explaining how these walls were built. Officially, the Inca are credited with constructing Sacsayhuaman around the 15th century, but they left no tools, no plans, and no proof of methodology. And when the Spanish conquistadors arrived, they could not explain the complex either. Chroniclers of the time described the fortress as being built by giants or spirits, and even the locals considered the site the work of gods. Some of the largest blocks would have required lifting systems far more advanced than anything available to the Inca. There were no wheels, no pulleys, no draft animals large enough to carry such weight up steep inclines at 12,000 feet of elevation. Microscopic analysis of the stone surfaces suggests they were not chipped or hammered in the traditional sense. Some researchers have proposed that the stones were softened using plant-based acids or heat, molded into shape, and then hardened in place. While this remains speculative, it would explain the smooth surface and perfect alignment. Others believe the stones were shaped using some form of sonic or vibrational tool, aligning the particles temporarily to allow reshaping. There is no evidence of such tools ever being found, only the finished product, staring back at us with impossible precision. In the 1980s, a proposal to use 3D mapping and laser scans to digitally reconstruct the interlocking stones was denied by local authorities. Officially, the reason was preservation concerns, but the researchers claimed their data had been confiscated before departure. No such scans have been made public since. The site remains open to tourists, but off-limits to advanced structural analysis. Today, the walls of Sacsayhuaman continue to stand without decay in defiance of earthquakes, erosion, and time itself. Unlike other ancient ruins, there is no crumbling, no tilting, no settling. The stones are frozen in geometric perfection, immune to entropy, and yet we still do not know how they were quarried, moved, carved, or assembled. If the Sacsayhuaman walls were crafted by a civilization we don't fully understand, then their builders possessed a level of engineering mastery that rivals or surpasses our own. It suggests that somewhere in the past, an entire school of thought about structure, resonance, and material behavior was discovered and then lost, not to erosion, but to silence. Top 5. The underground hydraulics of Teotihuacan. Beneath the ancient city of Teotihuacan lies a hidden world of tunnels and mysterious liquid metals that defy conventional history. In 2003, during a routine geophysical scan beneath the ancient Mexican city of Teotihuacan, archaeologists stumbled upon something unexpected. Underneath the temple of the feathered serpent, known as the Temple of Quetzalcoatl, ground-penetrating radar revealed a network of subterranean tunnels, chambers, and most bafflingly, an advanced hydraulic system. These structures had never been recorded in any historical document, nor were they visible from the surface. Hidden for over 1,000 years, the system appeared engineered not just for water movement, but for symbolic or energetic functions. The deeper researchers dug, the more the lines blurred between infrastructure and ritual technology. A forgotten mechanism had been buried beneath one of the most enigmatic cities in the ancient world. Teotihuacan, once the largest city in the Americas, is famed for its massive pyramids, precise urban grid, and alignment with celestial bodies. But the hydraulic system buried beneath the Temple of Quetzalcoatl adds a new layer of mystery. The tunnels lead to chambers lined with a strange metallic powder composed of pyrite and magnetite, materials that reflect light and have magnetic properties. The floor of the tunnel is subtly sloped, allowing water to flow downward in a controlled manner. Small conduits carved with smooth curves and constant gradients feed into reservoirs positioned at calculated intervals. Even the ceiling shows signs of water erosion in patterns that suggest intentional design rather than natural infiltration. What puzzles engineers is the precision of the tunnel's elevation changes. The gradient is consistent within fractions of an inch, maintaining a flow rate that modern hydrologists recognize as optimal for equalization. This level of control over water dynamics implies not just a deep understanding of hydraulics, but a capacity for subterranean construction that surpasses the tools and knowledge attributed to pre-Columbian civilizations. The materials used in the construction further complicate the narrative. The tunnel walls contain a mixture of volcanic stone and a mysterious binding agent that remains waterproof after more than 1,000 years. No known Mesoamerican text or tradition references such a compound. Even more unsettling is the presence of mercury, traces of which were discovered in liquid form within sealed chambers. In modern science, mercury is known for its conductivity and unique behavior under electromagnetic influence. Why it was stored underground beneath a religious complex remains a topic of intense speculation. Official reports from the National Institute of Anthropology and History confirmed the findings but downplayed their implications. Internal documents obtained by independent researchers suggest that some of the scanned areas showed additional anomalies, high-density zones consistent with unknown metallic components. But excavations were halted before these areas could be investigated. Since 2016, further exploration has been postponed indefinitely due to conservation priorities. Some archaeologists theorize that the system was used in rituals involving sound, water, and light. When water flowed through the tunnels, it may have resonated through the chambers above, creating specific acoustic effects. Combined with the reflective metallic surfaces and celestial alignments of the temple above, the hydraulic system could have been part of a complex apparatus designed to simulate divine presence or induce altered states of consciousness in ritual participants. But such interpretations remain speculative and are often dismissed by academic gatekeepers. If the underground hydraulics of Teotihuacan were purely functional, then they demonstrate a lost mastery of civil engineering. If they were symbolic or energetic in nature, then they point to a system of knowledge that fused science, spirituality, and architecture into a single unified framework. Either way, the tunnels beneath the feathered serpent suggest a civilization not merely building for survival, but encoding information in stone and water, beneath our feet and out of reach. Top 6. The Baalbek Platform Enigma. In Lebanon, we find a platform built with stones so heavy that no modern crane could lift them into place. In 1898, German archaeologist Otto Puchstein stood before the Temple of Jupiter in Baalbek, Lebanon, and found himself staring at what he would later call an insult to modern engineering. Lying beneath the ruins of the Roman temple was a massive stone platform, an ancient foundation built from some of the largest stones ever quarried and moved by human hands. Among them were the trilithon stones, each weighing an estimated 800 to 1,000 tons. One nearby stone still in the quarry was later measured at over 2,200 tons. Yet these stones had been precisely cut, transported more than a third of a mile uphill, and set into position with millimetric alignment without mortar, without cranes, and without written record. No ancient text explains how this was done. Even today, the feat is beyond our heaviest lifting technology. The stones lie in place as if gravity obeyed different rules in the past. The Roman temple that sits atop the platform is well documented, dating back to the 1st century CE, but the trilithon foundation is widely believed to predate Roman occupation by thousands of years. Its builders are unknown. The blocks are not just large, they are polished, fitted, and aligned with the cardinal points. No gaps exist between them. Engineers examining the site in the 20th century concluded that the effort to move a single 1,000-ton block over uneven terrain and align it without modern instruments would require thousands of men, specialized equipment, and a precision rarely achievable even today. The terrain around Baalbek offers no clues. There are no worn tracks, no scaffolding remnants, and no signs of progressive construction. It is as if the platform was simply placed there whole, beyond the reach of time or erosion. The ancient quarry from which the stones were taken still exists, but even it raises questions. The stones were carved directly from the bedrock, and their shape suggests they were intended to be moved in a single piece, not cut further down for transport. How this was achieved on an incline without fracturing the stone has no logical explanation. Some have speculated that the stones were floated on water or dragged over lubricated rollers, but experiments with scale models have failed to replicate the stability required for such transport, especially uphill. In the 1990s, ground scans beneath the Baalbek platform revealed anomalies suggesting further subterranean chambers or voids. Permission to excavate was denied by local authorities, citing political and religious sensitivity. No official investigation followed. In the meantime, photographic evidence of precise cuts, saw-like scoring on the blocks, and magnetic anomalies around the site were quietly archived and never published in peer-reviewed journals. One researcher who attempted to publish findings about acoustic harmonics in the stone layout was told the subject lacked academic relevance. There is no definitive timeline for when the platform was constructed, nor any inscriptions identifying its creators. Some propose it was a Phoenician work, others link it to an unknown pre-Semitic civilization. But none can explain the means. The theory that the Romans themselves built the platform collapses under the weight of physics. Roman cranes of the period could lift no more than 60 tons. The trilithon would have shattered any known device of the time. If the Baalbek platform is indeed the work of an earlier civilization, then we are looking at a technological leap so massive it doesn't fit into any existing chronology. This isn't just about lifting big stones. It's about logistics, planning, surveying, and structural engineering on a scale that suggests the builders had knowledge that disappeared long before written history began. The platform wasn't an afterthought. It was the foundation, a literal pedestal for a forgotten civilization whose monuments may have been erased, but whose fingerprints remain in stone. Top 7. The Stone Spheres of Costa Rica. Deep in the jungles of Costa Rica, hundreds of perfectly round stone spheres pose a mathematical enigma that defies explanation. In 1939, workers clearing a banana plantation for the United Fruit Company deep in the Digue Delta of southern Costa Rica struck something strange buried beneath the soil. It was smooth, round, and impossibly symmetrical. As they continued digging, they uncovered more of the same. Stone spheres, some small enough to carry by hand, others weighing over 15 tons and measuring more than 8 feet in diameter. Within weeks, dozens of these orbs were unearthed across the valley, arranged in geometric patterns, lines, triangles, and even spirals. Some pointed toward magnetic north, others aligned with solstices. No inscriptions, no obvious purpose, just silence. The workers dynamited several of them, expecting gold inside. There was nothing, just perfect stone. To this day, the spheres remain one of the least understood archaeological mysteries in the Americas. Known as Las Bolas, these spheres are carved primarily from gabbro, a dense igneous rock found in the nearby Talamanca Mountains. How they were shaped remains an enigma. Researchers analyzing their curvature found that the largest spheres deviate from a perfect sphere by less than 0.5%, a level of accuracy requiring sophisticated turning or grinding tools. Yet the pre-Columbian cultures of the region had no known metal tools, no measuring devices capable of such precision, and no written language. Carving a perfect sphere from solid rock, especially in large sizes, is an engineering challenge even today. To create dozens, possibly hundreds, across a widespread area with such consistency seems unthinkable. Many of the spheres were moved far from their quarry origins, some transported as much as 50 miles through dense jungle. Their placement is deliberate. In certain locations, spheres are embedded in ancient foundations or placed along axial alignments. A few sit in positions that mirror star constellations, while others appear to trace solar paths. In one plantation, 5 spheres form an exact isosceles triangle when plotted on a satellite map, with each point spanning hundreds of feet. These patterns would require aerial perspective or extremely precise surveying, tools we do not associate with the region's early civilizations. Despite these findings, official explanations remain vague. The prevailing theory is that the spheres were symbolic artifacts, perhaps status symbols or celestial markers. But there are problems. No similar artifacts have been found in neighboring cultures. No tools, sketches, or texts exist to document their creation. And despite their sheer size and number, the spheres are rarely mentioned in Costa Rican folklore. It is as if a civilization created them in silence, with purpose, and then vanished. In 2010, UNESCO designated the spheres as a World Heritage Site. Yet access to many of the original locations remains limited, and dozens of spheres have been moved to museums or private estates. Their displacement disrupted original alignments, making reconstruction of their placements and possible astronomical significance nearly impossible. Some researchers argue that this movement was not accidental, but intentional. Efforts to fully document the sphere's original positions were abandoned in the 1960s. Aerial surveys conducted by foreign universities were never released. The records disappeared into academic archives, locked away as curiosities rather than anomalies. The stone spheres of Costa Rica continue to stand in eerie silence, monuments to a lost intention. They are not monuments to rulers or gods. They bear no names. They give no warnings. And yet their mathematical precision and deliberate placement suggests they once played a role in a system of knowledge we have lost access to. A language of stone that spoke not in words but in geometry and shadow. If these spheres were just decorative, their perfection would be unnecessary. If they were sacred, then they encoded something. And if they encoded something, then someone understood the earth, the sky, and the human place between them better than we do now. The question isn't why they were made, it's why they had to be forgotten. Top 8. The Hittite Water Tunnel. In the ruins of the ancient Hittite capital, an underground water system reveals a lost mastery of hydraulics and engineering. In 1907, German archaeologist Hugo Winkler was excavating the ruins of Hadassa, the ancient capital of the Hittite Empire in modern-day Turkey, when he uncovered an anomaly deep beneath the hillside. At first glance, it appeared to be a natural fissure, but as the team descended, they realized they were inside a subterranean tunnel carved straight through solid rock. The floor was flat, the walls were smooth, and the ceiling arched with precise curvature. It extended for more than a mile underground. What Winkler had discovered was not a passageway. It was a hydraulic system, a water tunnel engineered over 3,000 years ago, with a level of control and foresight that defied the era's known capabilities. This was not an aqueduct. It was a machine hidden in stone. The tunnel, now referred to as the Nisentepe Water Tunnel, is over 3,000 feet long, averaging 6 feet in height and width. The floor slopes gently across its entire length, maintaining a near-perfect gradient of less than 1%, ideal for maintaining steady water flow without stagnation or erosion. Hydrologists who later studied the gradient with modern tools found that the change in elevation across the tunnel varies by mere inches over thousands of feet. There is no evidence of course correction. The entire tunnel was planned, measured, and executed as a single stroke without deviation. Unlike Roman aqueducts built centuries later, the Hittite system was entirely subterranean, protecting it from evaporation, contamination, and sabotage. The walls were reinforced with a form of mortarless stonework similar to that used in seismic zones of ancient Peru. In some places, the rock appears heat-treated, displaying signs of vitrification, where stone partially melts and fuses into a glass-like finish. No Hittite text describes this process. No tools from the era are capable of producing such results. Yet the structure remains intact after more than 3 millennia. The tunnel was not built in a straight line. It winds through bedrock, curves around fault lines, and intersects with underground chambers, some of which are still unexplored. One chamber emits a faint acoustic resonance when water flows through the tunnel, leading researchers to propose that the system may have served a dual purpose, both functional and ceremonial. The echo of water moving through stone would have created a low, constant hum, audible throughout the citadel above. Later surveys revealed multiple access points hidden behind false walls and stone slabs, some marked with undeciphered symbols. These weren't simple inspection holes. They were sealed portals hinting at a controlled system of flow regulation or hidden mechanisms. The water wasn't just transported, it was managed. And yet, no inscriptions or stelae celebrate the tunnel's construction. No kings claim credit. It exists in silence, forgotten even by the Hittites' own historical record. In 2012, Turkish engineers attempted to model the tunnel digitally to understand its construction process. Their data suggested the project would have required not only surveying tools, but also geological knowledge of soil composition, water tables, and long-term pressure management. Their conclusion, it reflects an unknown degree of engineering intelligence from the late Bronze Age. Why did a civilization active between 1600 and 1200 BCE build such a sophisticated system? And why was it buried and erased from cultural memory? Some propose the tunnel was meant to protect a water source considered sacred, while others believe it was connected to deeper subterranean networks, possibly even escape routes or ritual pathways. Excavations in the 1990s found adjacent tunnels leading toward nearby hills, but they were abruptly sealed with enormous stone blocks. No explanation has ever been given. If the Hittites built this tunnel alone, then they mastered engineering principles not seen again until modern times. If they did not, then the tunnel is a fragment of a much older legacy, adopted, repurposed, and then abandoned. Either way, the tunnel beneath Hattusa speaks in precise angles and silent water, outliving the empire it once served and whispering of a mastery we no longer possess. Top 9. The Osirian Puzzle. Hidden behind a famous Egyptian temple lies a megalithic structure that seems to belong to a much older and more mysterious era. In 1902, British archaeologist Sir Flinders Petrie was conducting excavations near Abydos, one of Egypt's oldest sacred cities, when he uncovered a structure that left him unnerved. Hidden beneath layers of sand and sediment, behind the more ornate temple of Seti I, lay the ruins of a building unlike any known Egyptian temple. Its name would later become the Osirian, but nothing about it matched the architecture or chronology of the pharaoh it was supposedly built for. The stones used were colossal, some weighing over 100 tons. They were arranged in megalithic precision, fitted without mortar, and sunk far below the water table in a design that had more in common with the structures of Peru than the temples of the Nile. Petrie's conclusion was simple and unsettling. The Osirian did not belong to the known timeline of Egyptian history. The layout of the Osirian is minimal and geometric. 2 rows of granite pillars, each over 6 feet wide, form a corridor that leads to a central chamber. Massive roof slabs once spanned the pillars, some of which now lie collapsed in the muddy water that permanently floods the interior. The floor lies over 30 feet below ground level. The granite blocks, imported from Aswan over 500 miles away, were placed with surgical precision in a space so tight that no construction errors could be corrected once the stones were lowered. And yet there are no inscriptions on the megaliths themselves, no hieroglyphs, no decorations, just clean, silent geometry. Egyptologists claim that the Osirian was a symbolic tomb built by Seti I around 1300 BCE, but the structure's architectural style predates that period by at least 1,000 years. Unlike other temples from the New Kingdom, which feature intricate reliefs, sanctuaries, and iconography, the Osirian is brutally minimal, more bunker than temple. Some have noted its resemblance to the Valley Temple near the Sphinx, another megalithic structure of uncertain date. The contrast is stark: ornate, well-documented Egyptian temples above ground, mysterious, undecorated giants beneath. When Petrie attempted to determine the age of the Osirian, he ran into a dead end. The stone had no organic residue for radiocarbon dating, and no building inscriptions could tie it definitively to any dynasty. The only textual reference to the structure comes from Seti's later additions to the area, which mention Osiris and imply a symbolic connection, but not authorship. It is as if the Osirian already existed, and Seti simply inherited it. Modern investigations have not resolved the mystery. Attempts to drain the chamber and scan the foundation were halted due to water seepage and bureaucratic delays. Independent researchers claim that magnetometer scans around the site indicate the presence of deeper chambers or cavities, but permits to excavate further have been repeatedly denied. Egyptian authorities maintain that the structure is fully understood and not worth further study. There are other anomalies. The Osirian's orientation aligns not with the Nile or the temples above, but with specific stars in the Orion constellation, mirroring celestial patterns that predate known Egyptian astronomy. The granite itself contains quartz crystals capable of piezoelectric responses under pressure, leading some to speculate on energetic functions. No evidence confirms this, but the material choices and layout continue to defy conventional explanations. If the Osirian is older than Seti's reign, then it rewrites the foundational assumptions of Egyptian chronology. It suggests that megalithic construction was underway long before the documented rise of dynastic Egypt, that somewhere in the pre-dynastic sands, a culture of immense architectural capability existed, one that did not carve its legacy in words but in immovable stone. The Osirian is not just a ruin, it is a question, buried, flooded, stripped of narrative, yet undeniable in its presence. If history forgot it, perhaps it was meant to, but the stones remain heavy, silent, and unclaimed. Top 10. The Nabta Playa Stone Circle. In the remote Nubian desert, a small circle of stones marks the very beginning of human astronomy and challenges our timeline of civilization. In 1974, a team of scientists led by Fred Wendorf, an American anthropologist, ventured into the Nubian desert of southern Egypt, roughly 60 miles west of Abu Simbel. What they were searching for were remnants of early nomadic tribes. What they found instead was something that would unsettle the entire timeline of human astronomy. Scattered across the sand were stones carefully arranged, aligned, and embedded into the ground. As excavation progressed, the layout took shape. A stone circle aligned with the cardinal directions, complete with megaliths pointing to the summer solstice sunrise. Later named Nabta Playa, this site would be carbon dated to over 7,000 years ago, nearly 2 millennia older than Stonehenge. And yet it displayed a level of astronomical precision that seemed impossible for a Neolithic pastoralist society. The main circle is about 13 feet in diameter, composed of upright slabs of sandstone, some over 6 feet tall. The central feature is a set of 3 stones in a line flanked by pairs of megaliths, which align with the rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. Even more remarkably, this alignment marks the heliacal rising of Sirius, a phenomenon tied to the annual flooding of the Nile. For the ancient Egyptians, this event would later become the basis of their entire calendar system. But Nabta Playa predates dynastic Egypt by thousands of years. Astronomers analyzing the site noted that the placement of the megaliths matched not only solar and the stellar events, but also shifting star positions caused by axial precession. This means the builders were not just observing the sky, they were tracking long-term celestial changes. One theory suggests that they had modeled Sirius's movement over centuries to predict its exact rising. That kind of predictive astronomy requires complex observation, detailed record-keeping, and generational knowledge transfer. There is no evidence that such tools or institutions existed in this period, yet the stones are there, placed with mathematical intent. Further excavations revealed a network of other structures nearby, stone alignments stretching for miles, tumuli that may have served as graves, and underground storage pits. Some features appear to correspond with constellations, suggesting the site may have functioned as both an observatory and a ceremonial ground. The artifacts found at Nabta Playa, clay vessels, bones, and stone tools, indicate a culture capable of symbolic thought, ritual behavior, and long-term planning. But nothing in the archaeological record explains how or why these nomads became precision astronomers. The site is now part of the Egyptian Western Desert, subject to harsh conditions and rapid erosion. Official studies of Nabta Playa have been sporadic. Proposals to digitally scan the entire complex have been rejected due to its remoteness and conservation concerns. Satellite imagery shows additional potential alignments extending beyond the documented area, but on-the-ground verification has been limited. Some researchers believe this is intentional. The deeper implications of the site challenge not only Egyptian chronology, but the entire narrative of how civilization began. Unlike the monumental temples of the Nile, Nabta Playa is quiet, almost invisible. No tourists, no fanfare, just scattered stones under the scorching sun. Yet it holds a secret that no other site does. It is the oldest known astronomical alignment on Earth. And it wasn't built by empire, priesthood, or written doctrine. It was built by a forgotten people in a forgotten time, looking to the stars with knowledge we thought they could not have. If Nabta Playa is what it appears to be, then the roots of scientific thought stretch far deeper than we imagine. Deeper than writing, deeper than cities, deeper than history itself. It suggests that long before civilization was carved in stone, it was drawn in starlight. These 10 structures are not isolated anomalies. They form a pattern, a deliberate haunting echo from a time before history, etched in stone, buried in sand, and hidden beneath ruins we thought we understood. The monuments at Pumapunku, Giza, Kailasa, and Baalbek are separated by continents, languages, and millennia. Yet they share one trait, a level of engineering precision that defies the tools and knowledge of their assigned eras. The alignment to cardinal points, the use of megaliths with tolerances within fractions of an inch, the acoustic properties, the astronomical functions, none of it is accidental. These are not scattered marvels. They are fingerprints, remnants of a system of knowledge that once spanned the earth. And yet, time and again, this knowledge vanishes. There are no blueprints, no manuals, no step-by-step inscriptions describing the techniques. The civilizations we credit as their builders left behind religious texts, royal decrees, and farming guides, but not one record explaining how to carve, transport, and align stones weighing hundreds of tons. Not one account of how to plot the heliacal rising of Sirius, or how to cut granite so precisely it reflects light. These feats emerge fully formed, then disappear, as if each was a page torn from a larger book we no longer possess. What we see instead is a consistent pattern of suppression or erasure. Excavations are blocked. Scan data is withheld. Sites like Teotihuacan, the Osirian, and Nabta Playa remain either off-limits or under-examined. Researchers who question the orthodox timeline are sidelined, dismissed, or their findings buried in obscure journals. What is being protected? And why does the academic gatekeeping intensify around structures that most challenge our narrative of linear progress? This is not simply a loss of history, it is the silencing of potential. If these technologies had been studied openly, if their principles had been preserved, what could humanity have achieved? Energy systems aligned with Earth's frequencies, materials engineered at atomic precision, environmental design integrated with astronomical cycles. We may have forfeited not just monuments, but pathways to understanding physics, consciousness, and time itself. Each stone buried or misunderstood is a chapter of human potential lost. The tragedy is not just in what we do not know, but in what someone somewhere may have chosen to forget or force the world to forget. Civilizations that remembered too much were turned to dust. Technologies that resonated too deeply were deemed dangerous. Structures that could not be replicated were reassigned to less threatening origins. And the truth, whatever it was reduced to myth. But the silence is breaking. Satellite imaging, 3D scanning, and independent scholarship are beginning to peel back the layers of official history. And beneath them, a different story emerges. A story of minds that saw through stone, of builders who measured the stars, of civilizations whose legacy was never meant to be erased, but only rediscovered by those willing to ask the questions others fear. Because the question is not whether these structures exist. They do. The question is not even how they were made, but why such knowledge had to be hidden, why it was deemed too dangerous, too disruptive, or too powerful to survive in the light of modern history. And in the end, perhaps the most terrifying thought is this: what if the ancients did not forget? What if they were silenced? If these ancient enigmas have shifted your perspective on the history we were taught, make sure to subscribe and like the channel. We are uncovering the hidden chronicles that time tried to erase. Help us plant the seeds for a clearer future. The next vault of history will be opened very soon.